The forest was in disarray. The 4 warriors from the Stormcloud dynasty lay on the ground, their breaths barely detectable. Lin Dong didn't pay them any attention. His eyes flickered toward the direction where Yin and Mo had fled. He wasn't afraid of any super dynasties at this point, but he also wasn't interested in courting unnecessary trouble. Letting someone live to report back was not something he was willing to do. Brother Lin Dong, that Yin and Mo is no pushover. He has quite a few tricks up his sleeve. Letting Lord Mink chase after him alone, Su Kuei said in a low voice, clearly understanding Lin Dong's intention. Lin Dong waved it off with a smile. With little Mink on the case, no matter what tricks Yin and Mo has, he won't get away. At that moment, little Yin, who had just retrieved his iron staff, landed beside Lin Dong. His massive frame cast a shadow over Su Kuei and the others, causing them to feel as if a heavy stone had pressed down on their chests. The ferocity little Yin had displayed earlier was still fresh in their minds, making them uneasy. Su Kuei stole a glance at little Yin. The face that had been twisted with a terrifying bloodlust moments before now wore a simple, honest smile. It was hard to reconcile the image of this smiling giant with the ruthless, Shura-like figure from before. Su Kuei sighed inwardly, giving Lin Dong and his companions a mental label: mysterious and unpredictable. Their wait didn't last long. After just a few minutes, the sound of rushing wind came from the distance. A figure flew through the air, and with a few swift movements, it landed beside them. The figure was none other than little Mink, who had chased after Yin and Mo earlier, now with his usual lazy demeanor. All done? Lin Dong asked with a smile. A small fry. Nothing to worry about. But I did find a spirit jade on him, so news of their deaths will probably reach the Stormcloud dynasty's leaders soon enough, little Mink said carelessly. Upon hearing this, Su Kuei's eyes twitched, and he looked at little Mink in disbelief. He knew Yin Mo's strength well. Even if he had given his all, Su Kuei could have only lasted a few dozen exchanges at best. Yet to little Mink, Yin and Mo was just a small fry? Are they really from a lesser dynasty? Su Kuei wondered, bitterly smiling to himself. It was hard to believe that Lin Dong and his group were from a low-ranked dynasty. Their demeanor and actions were more fitting of someone from a super dynasty. Lin Dong nodded, unsurprised. Even if the news didn't get back immediately, it wouldn't be hidden for long. Brother Lin Dong, I can't thank you 3 enough for saving us. This is a debt Su Kuei will never forget. If I ever have the chance, I will repay it, even if it costs me my life. Su Kuei said solemnly, clasping his fists in gratitude. Thank you, Brother Lin Dong, Su Ro said. Her large eyes filled with gratitude as she looked at the trio. Lin Dong smiled and glanced at little Mink. He knew that most of their intervention was because of little Mink's instigation. This guy never did anything without a reason. If he wasn't planning something, the odds of him playing the hero were slim. Little Mink flashed a grin but said nothing, though the glint in his eyes revealed that something was definitely brewing in his mind. What are your plans from here? Lin Dong asked, looking at Su Kuei and his group. We were planning to head to the core region of the ancient battleground, but with everything that's happened, we're thinking of retreating, Su Kuei replied with a bitter smile. Everyone who came here dreamed of catching the attention of a super sect and soaring to new heights, and they were no different. But with the Stormcloud dynasty blocking their way, they couldn't even make it through Myriad Elephant City. We're heading to the core as well. If you'd like, you can join us, little Mink suddenly offered with a smile. Lin Dong blinked in surprise. He hadn't expected little Mink to extend an invitation, but he didn't object. He had grown fond of Su Ro, whose innocence was still intact despite everything they'd gone through. Su Kuei and the others were equally surprised. They looked at little Mink, then at Lin Dong, hesitating. The Stormcloud dynasty is after us. You've already helped us once, and we don't want to drag you into more trouble. Lin Dong smiled calmly. The trouble's already here, so a little more won't make a difference. Besides, you don't want to be stuck outside Myriad Elephant City forever, do you? Of course not. If you trust us, we can travel together. Brother Lin Dong, how could we not? Su Kuei said quickly, glancing at Su Ro before gritting his teeth. If you're willing to take us along, we'll follow. But I'm afraid the road ahead will bring more complications. Thank you, Brother Lin Dong. Su Ro's face lit up with joy, her clear eyes filled with genuine gratitude as she gazed at Lin Dong and his companions. Lin Dong couldn't help but feel a bit awkward under her gaze. Meanwhile, little Mink chuckled dryly, averting his eyes. The truth was, he had his eye on the immense power hidden within Su Ro. Though he had no intention of stealing it, he knew that if she could one day control it, her potential would be limitless. Helping her now could forge an invaluable connection in the future. A deal that the ever-cunning little Mink couldn't pass up. Well, we're not too familiar with Myriad Elephant City either, so having someone guide us might actually be useful, Lin Dong said with a smile, turning his gaze toward the horizon. It's getting late. Let's move out. Of course, Su Kuei quickly agreed. He leaped into the air, taking the lead, while Lin Dong, Su Ro, and the others followed close behind. On the way to Myriad Elephant City, Lin Dong glanced at little Mink, his lips moving slightly, transmitting a faint voice into the latter's ear. What are you really planning? Hearing Lin Dong's question, little Mink chuckled and said, Lord Mink is doing this for your own good. The 100 Dynasty War isn't just an ordinary battle. To win there, you not only need exceptional strength but also reliable companions. That girl Su Ro has a lot of potential. With some guidance, she could be quite helpful in the war. Lin Dong cast a skeptical look at little Mink. Could this carefree rascal really have such good intentions? Generally speaking, ancient powers like the one hidden within Su Ro come with absurdly strict requirements for their inheritors. The fact that she meets those criteria is no small feat, even you wouldn't have more than a 50% chance of fulfilling them, little Mink added, seeing Lin Dong's suspicious gaze. That remarkable? Lin Dong was a bit surprised. He had confidence in his abilities, but hadn't expected that even he wouldn't have better than a 50% chance. Out of all the people you've encountered over the years, I'd say only 2 have greater talent than her. Oh. Lin Dong raised an eyebrow, intrigued. If little Mink rated Su Ro so highly, who could be even stronger? Both of them are pretty close to you. One is Ling Qingzhu, who you had a brief encounter with, and the other is your younger sister, Qingtan. Ling Qingzhu and Qingtan? Lin Dong's mouth twitched, and he let out a dry laugh. Ling Qingzhu's background is exceptional, so it's no surprise her talent surpasses mine. But Qingtan? She seemed pretty average in cultivation. If you really compare raw talent, that girl could leave you in the dust. Some things just don't reveal themselves right away, little Mink scoffed. He glanced at Lin Dong's frustrated expression and then grinned. Talent is important, sure, but if you want to become one of the strongest under the heavens, talent alone won't cut it. Things like determination and resilience matter more. In that respect, you've got the edge over Qingtan. Lin Dong smiled, the frustration slowly fading from his face, but his gaze deepened slightly. He murmured softly, to reach that level requires more sacrifice than most can imagine. Even if Qingtan has greater talent than me, I don't want her walking too far down this path. I'll bear the hardships for her. If anyone dares to bully her, I'll make sure they regret it. You're being a bit overbearing. How do you know she wouldn't like walking this path if you don't let her? Little Mink teased. Lin Dong shrugged, choosing not to argue further. He had left Qingtan behind in the Great Yin Dynasty, figuring she would live a quiet life there. As for the storms of the outside world, he would face them on his own. But unbeknownst to Lin Dong, things wouldn't unfold as he imagined. Sooner than he thought, he might witness an entirely different scene. Ling Qingzhu. Setting thoughts of Qingtan aside, Lin Dong's mind drifted to the image of a woman stepping lightly on a green lotus, as ethereal as a goddess descended to earth. She was the first woman he had ever been intimately involved with, and his feelings toward her were complicated. She was perfect, too perfect, like a flawless jade statue that could only be admired from afar. Yet it was precisely this perfection that Lin Dong had shattered in the ancient tomb. Because of him, a tiny flaw had appeared in that flawless image. That single flaw had broken his respectful distance, and unbeknownst to him, the shadow of her presence had left an indelible mark in his heart. From that moment on, Lin Dong harbored a wild, almost audacious thought. He wanted this perfect woman, revered by all, to be his. Lin Dong had left the Great Yin Dynasty without hesitation, stepping into the chaos and fierce competition of the ancient battleground. A significant reason for this decision was the desire to one day stand before her again, to tell her that the words he had spoken on that mountain outside Flame City were not the reckless boasting of a youth. Ling Qingzhu, not even the 100 Dynasty War you spoke of will stop me. Lin Dong raised his head, his gaze fixed on the brilliant sun in the sky, and a reckless grin slowly spread across his face. When the time comes, I'll stand before you and say, a woman I've slept with is destined to be mine. That year, under the blood-red sunset on the mountain, a young man had looked at the graceful and beautiful woman before him, and with fierce, unrestrained passion, uttered those words. At that moment, the feeling of desecrating a goddess was unparalleled. Myriad Elephant City was located near the core region of the ancient battleground. As one of the few cities that provided passage to the core, it was unimaginably vast and bustling. The city's sheer size seemed to encompass an entire mountain range, an awe-inspiring sight. Unlike the chaotic regions in the rest of the ancient battleground, this city was governed by strict rules. It wasn't controlled by any dynasty within the battleground, but by forces dispatched by the super sects. With the super sects maintaining order here, even the most arrogant and unruly geniuses from the various dynasties dared not act recklessly. Though the sects had only casually assigned someone to guard the city, most wouldn't challenge their authority. After all, strength was only part of the equation. The weight of the words super sect alone was enough to make everyone behave. Of course, this didn't mean that everyone in Myriad Elephant City had to behave perfectly. Combat was still allowed, and people could fight freely as long as it didn't go too far. The enforcers sent by the super sects who guarded the city would often turn a blind eye to minor conflicts. They weren't interested in taming these unruly individuals into obedient followers. As a result, compared to the chaotic regions of the ancient battleground, Myriad Elephant City was a much more orderly place. After about half a day's journey, Lin Dong and his group finally crossed a towering mountain ridge, and an enormous city, so vast it seemed endless, filled their view with a breathtaking spectacle. The towering city walls seemed to pierce the heavens and stretched endlessly in both directions. Even as far as their eyes could see, the walls continued on without end. Though Lin Dong had encountered many grand cities in the ancient battleground, none of them compared to this one. Next to Myriad Elephant City, all the others seemed insignificant. The sky outside the city was filled with the sound of rushing wind as countless figures soared through the air, coming from every direction before landing outside the city. Among the crowd of figures, Lin Dong could sense several formidable auras, which caused a hint of awe to flash in his eyes. As expected of one of the rare super cities in the ancient battleground, the number and strength of experts gathered here were on an entirely different level. This place was truly a gathering of hidden dragons and crouching tigers, where the strongest of the strong converged. Brother Lin Dong, Myriad Elephant City is a no-fly zone, so we'll have to enter through the main gate. This city is guarded by forces from the super sects, and everyone here is required to follow the rules, Su Kuei explained as he looked at the massive city ahead. Understood. Lin Dong nodded. He had heard a bit about Myriad Elephant City before. Regardless of where you came from or how tough you were, everyone had to rein in their arrogance here. Few were foolish enough to challenge the authority of the super sects, as the main reason most people came to this city was to pass the numerous trials and hopefully become disciples of these powerful sects that towered over the world. Oh, by the way, Brother Lin Dong, I assume the three of you are qualified to be listed on the Nirvana rankings, right? Since it's your first time here, the most important thing for you is to get your Nirvana seal, Su Kuei suddenly said, as if remembering something. Nirvana seal? Lin Dong asked, slightly confused. To participate in the final 100 Dynasty War, the first requirement is to possess a Nirvana seal. It's like an entry ticket, absolutely essential, Su Kuei explained with a smile. Generally, anyone who has reached the second Nirvana stage is eligible to receive a Nirvana seal. However, the seals come in 3 grades: Heaven, Earth, and Human. My seal is just the most common human grade, Su Kuei added with an embarrassed smile, extending his hand. A faint light flickered in his palm, and a gray, tower-shaped symbol appeared. Is there a significant difference between the grades of Nirvana seals? Lin Dong asked. It reflects one's strength. Most people only qualify for the human grade seal. A select few exceptional individuals can obtain Earth grade seals, and as for those with heaven grade Nirvana seals, well, they're basically untouchable. From what I've heard, anyone with a heaven grade seal is already qualified to compete for a spot on the Nirvana Golden Rankings. Nirvana Golden Rankings. Hearing the weight of that name again, Lin Dong nodded slightly. Anyone who could qualify for the Nirvana Golden Rankings would undoubtedly catch the eye of the super sects, which explained why the competition was so fierce. How are the Nirvana seals graded? Is it based purely on one's apparent strength? Lin Dong asked curiously. In Myriad Elephant City, there's something called the Nirvana Monument. All qualified experts who want to be listed on the Nirvana rankings must be tested by it. Once tested, your name automatically appears on the monument, which can also assess your combat strength and even your hidden potential to determine the grade of your Nirvana seal, Su Kuei explained with a grin. Oh. Lin Dong was somewhat surprised. This Nirvana monument was so powerful that it could even detect hidden potential? Monuments like this one are placed in all super cities by the super sections. According to some rumors, the Nirvana monument is actually a genuine heaven-tier spiritual treasure, Su Kuei said in a low voice. Heaven-tier spiritual treasure. Lin Dong's eyes widened in astonishment, and he couldn't help but click his tongue. He had been in the ancient battleground for quite some time and had explored many treasure troves, yet he had never encountered a heaven-tier spiritual treasure. The rarity and value of such treasures were beyond imagination. And to think, the super sects had the audacity to place one in each super city. Haha, brother Lin Dong, don't even think about making a move on that thing. Anyone who harbors the slightest thought of damaging the Nirvana Monument will immediately be disqualified from participating in the 100 Dynasty War, and their entire dynasty might even face punishment. It could result in their loss of qualification to enter the ancient space next time, Su Kuei joked. Lin Dong chuckled at his words. He wasn't foolish. Heaven-tier spiritual treasures were incredibly rare and powerful, but they weren't worth losing one's life over. If a super sect became enraged, even a powerful dynasty could be wiped out in an instant. Lin Dong had no intention of underestimating these massive forces that stood at the pinnacle of the world. In that case, let's head to the Nirvana Monument, Lin Dong said. Since the Nirvana seal was a necessary item, it was better to get it sooner rather than later. If something went wrong and he missed his chance to participate in the 100 Dynasty War, Lin Dong would have no one to blame but himself. Su Kuei nodded with a smile and led Lin Dong's group as they descended from the sky outside the city. Myriad Elephant City, as a super city, had over a dozen gates for entry. However, each gate was crowded with people, yet the lines were astonishingly orderly. The chaos common in other places seemed to vanish here, making Lin Dong silently admire the overwhelming authority of the super sections. The people who came here were no ordinary folk. Each was proud and unruly. Yet even so, they followed the rules in this place. Lin Dong and his companions joined the line and, after about half an hour, finally entered the vast city. The moment they stepped inside, a wave of sound mixed with searing heat rushed toward them, making Lin Dong and the others squint slightly to adjust. Once their eyes adjusted, they looked at the enormous streets, filled with dense crowds of people, and couldn't help but exchange wry smiles. This truly was a super city. Let's go to the Nirvana Monument, Lin Dong said, not interested in wandering around aimlessly. He was focused on getting the important task done first. Su Kuei nodded and led the way, weaving through the maze-like streets with Lin Dong and the others following closely behind. After another half-hour of walking, they finally reached the central area of Myriad Elephant City. As they entered the heart of the city, Lin Dong's eyes were drawn to the center, where an enormous, towering plaza stood. The plaza was about 100 meters tall, and the wide stone steps leading to it were filled with people. Lin Dong's gaze eventually locked onto the massive golden monument at the plaza's center. The golden light flickered and rippled across its surface, forming rings of radiant light that surrounded the monument. Its brilliance made it the most eye-catching sight in this super city. So, that's the Nirvana Monument? Lin Dong muttered. licking his lips as he felt the powerful energy emanating from the monument. The golden monument stood silently, encircled by golden rings. The faint yet overwhelming energy it radiated made it impossible for anyone to underestimate. Lin Dong stared at the golden monument for a long time before finally retracting his gaze. The awe in his eyes gradually faded. On the surface of the monument, he could see countless names inscribed, likely belonging to those who had passed the test and obtained their Nirvana seals. At that moment, a large crowd had gathered in front of the monument. This was one of the most prominent locations in Myriad Elephant City, and nearly every expert who came to the city would visit to obtain their Nirvana seal and to gauge their strength against other experts from all corners of the battleground. Lin Dong and his group made their way up the towering plaza, finding a good spot in front of the golden monument. No wonder they call this a super city. The number of experts here is staggering. It seems the strongest in the ancient battleground have gathered here, Little Mink remarked, glancing around with a grin. Lin Dong nodded slightly. His gaze swept around the area surrounding the Nirvana Monument. Those who had made it this far had overcome countless dangers, and nearly 70% of them had reached the Nirvana stage. These people were the backbone of the ancient battleground's powerhouses. As Lin Dong continued scanning the crowd, his eyes focused on the area closest to the monument. His expression sharpened slightly as he sensed several, particularly strong presences. At the front, there were 3 distinct groups of people. On the left was a group of about a dozen individuals, each radiating a powerful aura. In the center of the group was a man dressed in silver robes. He was quite handsome, but the arrogance and smugness on his face made it clear that he was a brazen and unrestrained individual. From what Lin Dong could sense, the man seemed to have the strength to back up his attitude. The power faintly emanating from his body was comparable to the 2 generals he had previously encountered from the Great Qian dynasty. Clearly, this man was not someone to be underestimated. In the center of the crowd stood a woman in snow-white robes, her beauty unmatched. However, her entire being exuded a cold, unapproachable aura, as if she were a 1,000-year-old ice statue. Even from a distance, it was clear that no one dared to approach her. She seemed oblivious to the gazes around her, her eyes focused solely on the golden monument. Her long black hair cascaded down like a waterfall, reaching her slender waist, accentuating her graceful curves. The countless gazes from the crowd, filled with both admiration and desire, couldn't help but linger on her figure. On the right side of the plaza, there was also a group of people dressed in various styles of clothing. At the front of this group stood a man in black robes, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression calm, like a deep, unfathomable pool of water. Interesting, Lin Dong murmured to himself as his gaze swept over the 3 groups. None of them seemed ordinary, and he was well aware that these were likely not the only powerful groups gathered in Myriad Elephant City. The group on the left is from the Silverwood dynasty, a high-ranking dynasty. The leader is called EngSubs, and his strength has reached the peak of the 3rd Nirvana stage. His personality is extremely arrogant, and he's somewhat famous here in Myriad Elephant City, Su Kuei quietly explained. He's quite an annoying guy, Su Ro added softly. Hearing this, Lin Dong glanced at Su Ro in surprise. The young woman blushed and lowered her head shyly. Hee, that guy has seen Su Ro a few times and pestered her a bit. He can be a little irritating, Su Kuei explained with a laugh. It seems Su Ro has quite the charm, Lin Dong teased, his eyes falling on the young woman's rosy cheeks, which only deepened in color as she shyly hid behind Luya. That woman in white is Mu Hanyue. She's got quite the background. Don't be fooled by the fact that she's alone. She has the backing of a super dynasty. Anyone who tries to mess with her usually ends up in a bad situation, Su Kuei continued, pointing to the most eye-catching figure in the plaza. Another person from a super dynasty? Huh, Lin Dong remarked, slightly surprised as he looked at the graceful woman dressed in white, who stood out like a snow lotus. It seemed that in Myriad Elephant City, one could run into super dynasty members quite frequently. The group on the right is more unusual. They're not from a single dynasty, but are a coalition of several. While their dynasties aren't particularly well known, each of them is quite strong. Especially the man in black. Rumor has it that he inherited the legacy of an ancient sect, and his strength has also reached the peak of the third Nirvana stage. A few days ago, he single-handedly wiped out a high-ranking dynasty that was his enemy, Su Kuei added. Oh. Lin Dong raised an eyebrow and took another look at the black-clad man with his hands behind his back. His understanding of how deep the waters ran in Myriad Elephant City was becoming clearer. They've come here to get their Nirvana seals too, I'm sure. I wonder what grade these people will achieve, Su Kuei said, a hint of curiosity in his voice. Lin Dong nodded slightly, his interest piqued as well. He was also eager to see how these seemingly strong experts would fare in the Nirvana Monument's test. As time passed, more and more people gathered in front of the Nirvana Monument. Some stepped forward to take the test, but most of them only achieved a human-grade Nirvana seal, which wasn't particularly impressive. After watching for a while, Lin Dong noticed that most of the people who obtained a human-grade Nirvana seal were at the second Nirvana stage. If you have the strength of the second Nirvana stage, you can generally get a human-grade Nirvana seal. But if you've reached the third Nirvana stage, you can usually manage an Earth-grade seal. When I took the test before, I was only at the second Nirvana stage, so I got a human-grade seal. I'll test myself again later. I should be able to upgrade to an Earth-grade seal now. But even so, I'll probably rank quite low, Su Kuei explained from beside him. Lin Dong smiled and continued to watch the massive monument. Every time someone passed the test, their name appeared on its surface. However, most of the names were near the bottom. It seemed that the higher a name appeared on the monument, the stronger the person was. As this thought crossed his mind, Lin Dong's gaze moved upward. After a moment, he spotted two familiar names in the middle section of the monument, Zhu Tianhua and Mu Huang. These two were the generals of the Great Qin dynasty, and it appeared that they had achieved a slightly higher Earth-grade Nirvana seal. Just as Lin Dong was observing the monument, a commotion suddenly broke out in the plaza. He looked down and saw that EngSubs from the Silverwood dynasty had finally stepped forward. His arrogant demeanor was on full display as he strode confidently toward the Nirvana Monument. As one of the more prominent figures in the area, his appearance immediately drew many gazes. Even the white-robed woman, who had previously seemed uninterested in anything, glanced in his direction. Standing before the massive monument, EngSubs stretched out his hand and pressed it lightly against the cold surface of the monument. The moment he made contact, a powerful surge of primordial energy erupted from his body, causing many around him to look on in surprise. As his energy surged, the Nirvana Monument responded, emitting a golden light that spread quickly from EngSubs' palm. In mere moments, the light surpassed the human grade level and shot into the Earth grade section. It continued climbing amid gasps of astonishment before finally coming to a stop. Lin Dong's gaze followed the golden light and saw EngSubs' name appear on the monument. Glancing upward, he noticed that there were only 8 names ahead of EngSubs. In other words, EngSubs had ranked 9th in the Earth grade, surpassing Zhu Tianhua and Mu Huang by a significant margin. 9th in the Earth grade. The area around the monument buzzed with murmurs of surprise. Clearly, this was a very high ranking. Looks like Mu Hanyue is about to make her move. As the crowd marveled at EngSubs' ranking, the snow-white figure of Mu Hanyue finally took a step forward, her movements graceful and deliberate. Heh, Mu Hanyue, let's see if you can surpass me, EngSubs sneered, his eyes lingering on her alluring figure as he licked his lips. Mu Hanyue glanced at him coldly, not bothering to respond. She walked to the Nirvana Monument, her long, delicate hand reaching out to touch its icy surface. Tisage, seeing that Mu Hanyue completely ignored him, EngSubs scowled, clearly displeased. But he didn't dare to push further. He knew well enough who stood behind her. With the entire crowd's attention on her, Mu Hanyue's hand radiated golden light as it made contact with the monument. The light surged upward swiftly, breaking into the Earth grade section with ease. One by one, it surpassed the names listed, finally stopping just ahead of EngSubs, leaving his face dark with frustration. Earth grade rank 8, 1 rank higher than EngSubs. Mu Hanyue's performance drew another round of astonished gasps. Such a result was undeniably impressive, marking her as one of the top contenders in the ancient battleground. They're all quite remarkable, Lin Dong mused with a soft chuckle. His interest in the Nirvana Monument had only grown stronger. His gaze shifted to the black-robed man with his hands behind his back, who had remained calm and unbothered by the previous results. I wonder where this guy will rank, Lin Dong thought aloud. His curiosity piqued. As Lin Dong murmured, the black-robed man finally stepped forward, his movements slow and steady as he approached the Nirvana Monument. His appearance drew the immediate attention of the crowd, as he was evidently a well-known figure even in Myriad Elephant City. Mu Hanyue's eyes also turned toward the black-robed man. She had heard of him before. This ruthless figure had once single-handedly wiped out an entire high-ranking dynasty. Now, she was curious to see how he would fare in the Nirvana Monument's test. EngSubs squinted, his gaze slightly uneasy as he watched the black-robed man. His keen instinct sensed a faint, dangerous aura emanating from the man, something he usually only felt from those ranked in the top 5 of the Earth grade. Is this guy really that strong? EngSubs thought with a hint of irritation. He wasn't fond of seeing others surpass him. The black-robed man reached out his hand, gently placing it on the cool surface of the Nirvana Monument. For a brief moment, nothing happened, and then a brilliant golden light erupted from his palm. The intensity of the light was far stronger than that of either EngSubs or Mu Hanyue. The golden light shot up the monument at an astonishing speed, and the crowd around the plaza erupted in astonishment. Swish, swish. The light surged upward, blasting through the Earth grade section without hesitation, surpassing name after name. In no time, it had overtaken both EngSubs and Mu Hanyue, continuing its climb. He's reached 7th place. And it's still rising. This guy is unbelievably strong. The crowd's exclamations grew louder as the golden light continued its ascent, albeit at a slower pace. Each time the light jumped higher, another wave of astonished murmurs spread through the plaza. 5th place. The light finally flickered and passed the 6th name, pushing the 5th-ranked name down. As the light dimmed, 2 golden characters appeared on the monument. Chongling, Earth grade rank 5. Seeing the solidified rank, the crowd erupted into whispers, spreading a small commotion throughout the plaza. EngSubs snorted in displeasure, clearly upset that Chongling had stolen the spotlight from him. Even Mu Hanyue's icy eyes flickered slightly. She hadn't expected Chongling to reach the 5th rank in the Earth grade, an achievement that put him on par with some of the elite generals from the Super Dynasties. Chongling, huh? Impressive indeed, Lin Dong observed, his tone tinged with admiration. From the reactions of the people around him, it was clear that Chongling's performance was quite extraordinary. He's very strong. To reach the 5th rank in the Earth grade, this guy, Su Kuei nodded in agreement, sighing. The top 4 are all elite generals from Super Dynasties, with incredible strength. I didn't expect Chongling to get so close to them. Truly remarkable. Lin Dong smiled, his curiosity deepening. He couldn't help but wonder how high he could climb on the Nirvana Monument with his current abilities. At the front of the monument, Chongling glanced at his ranking with a slight frown. Though he seemed a bit dissatisfied, he knew that reaching this level was already his limit. With a small nod, he turned and rejoined his companions. Even after Chongling finished his test, the excitement in the plaza remained palpable. Many of the people present were filled with a mixture of excitement and envy. They had been in this space for nearly a year now, and before arriving, each had been a top talent in their respective dynasties. But after entering the ancient battleground, they had quickly realized that even among geniuses, there were vast differences in talent and strength. Some so-called prodigies had faded into mediocrity, while others had risen to greatness through harsh trials, becoming exceptional talents molded by the unforgiving competition. Let's give it a try as well, Su Kuei said eagerly, looking toward Lin Dong and the others. Lin Dong smiled and nodded. The group proceeded to the massive Nirvana Monument. Unlike EngSubs and the others, their approach didn't draw much attention. To the onlookers, they seemed like a fairly ordinary group. Su Kuei was the first to step forward, placing his hand on the monument. As he unleashed his 3rd Nirvana stage power, golden light surged from his palm. After a brief struggle, he finally broke into the Earth grade section of the monument. Although his ranking was far below EngSubs, entering the Earth grade was still an impressive accomplishment compared to the majority. Looking at his result, Su Kuei grinned, clearly satisfied with the fruits of his recent training. "Big brother, you're amazing," Su Rou said cheerfully, her face glowing with pride. "Hee, if you think Su Kuei's result is amazing, then I guess your dear Yin Sin must be your white knight." A mocking voice interrupted, breaking the moment. The group turned to see Yin Sin walking over with a sly grin, his eyes brazenly scanning Su Rou's body in a way that made everyone uncomfortable. "You." Su Rou's face flushed with anger at his lecherous gaze. "Watch your mouth, Yin Sin." Su Kuei's expression darkened as he shouted coldly. "I heard you were being chased by the Stormcloud dynasty. How did you manage to return here? Need protection? I think I'd be a great match for little Su Rou. She wouldn't lose out being with me," Yin San said with a smirk, his arrogant smile widening. "Don't you think so, Su Rou?" Yin San stepped forward, moving to stand beside her. Whoosh! Before he could take another step, a shadow, wielding immense power, suddenly shot forward, shattering the air as it aimed directly for Yin Sen's throat. Startled by the sudden attack, Yin San quickly dodged to the side, his expression darkening as he glared at Xiao Yin, who was holding a large iron staff, pointing it straight at him. The powerful experts from the Silverwood dynasty behind Yin San immediately reacted, their expressions shifting as waves of primordial energy surged around them, their eyes now filled with hostility toward Lin Dong and his group. Sensing the rising tension, Su Rou instinctively stepped back, moving closer to Lin Dong. "Can you handle the Stormcloud dynasty's troubles? Big talk doesn't make you a man," Lin Dong said calmly, his gaze fixed on Yin San. Yin Sen's face twitched slightly. Though arrogant, he wasn't a fool. He knew that the Stormcloud dynasty was a genuine super dynasty, far beyond his ability to deal with. His earlier words had merely been an attempt to tease Su Rou. "What? Did you latch onto a strong backer? Just be careful that the leg you cling to isn't all show and no substance." Yin San sneered, his words dripping with venom. Su Rou's face flushed red with anger, but before she could retort, Lin Dong raised his hand to stop her. Beside him, little Mink yawned lazily and said, "Want me to throw this guy out?" By this time, a sizable crowd had gathered around the Nirvana Monument, drawn by the tense atmosphere. Even Mu Hanyue and Chang Ling turned their attention to the scene. When they heard little Mink's casual remark, a few of them paused in surprise. Despite Yin Sen's arrogance, he was still strong enough to rank in the top 10 of the Earth grade list. Throwing him out wouldn't be easy without considerable strength. The onlookers turned their attention to little Mink, trying to gauge his strength, but no matter how they probed, they couldn't sense anything special about him. "Throw me out?" Yin Sen laughed mockingly, clearly amused. "There may be people in Myriad Elephant City capable of saying that to me, but you're definitely not one of them. Su Kuei, next time you want to find a backer, try picking someone smarter. Otherwise, you'll only get into more trouble." "How annoying," little Mink said with a soft smile, clenching his hand. Su Kuei, who had seen little Mink eliminate Yenemo from the Stormcloud dynasty in mere minutes, felt a shiver run down his spine at the sight of that smile. "Let's focus on the task at hand," Lin Dong interrupted, just as little Mink was about to take action. He turned toward the Nirvana Monument, placing his right hand on its cold surface while keeping his other hand behind his back. Because of little Mink's earlier provocative words, the crowd, including Yin Xian, Mu Hanyue, and Chang Ling, shifted their attention to Lin Dong. It seemed clear that Lin Dong was the leader of the group, and his upcoming test would reveal whether they were bluffing or truly capable. Yin San narrowed his eyes, a cold glint flashing within them. He had already made up his mind. After Lin Dong's test, he would personally make sure these newcomers learned the consequences of disrespecting him in Myriad Elephant City. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Lin Dong stood still. As his palm touched the icy surface of the monument, he immediately felt a unique power spread from it, scanning every inch of his body. As the scanning power moved through him, Lin Dong felt his primordial energy and spiritual energy within his Yuewen palace begin to stir on their own. The scanning process was swift but thorough. Strangely, the four seemed to faintly detect the presence of the mysterious stone talisman, the ancient heaven and earth formation, and the devouring ancestral talisman within Lin Dong's body. Slightly surprised by this discovery, Lin Dong quickly reacted. With a single thought, the mysterious stone talisman and the devouring ancestral talisman surged with power, forcefully dispersing the scanning energy. Buzz. The moment the scanning energy was shattered, a dazzling golden light erupted from Lin Dong's palm, so bright and intense that it resembled a blazing golden sun. The radiant golden light illuminated the faces of everyone around, filling them with shock and awe. Golden light erupted from Lin Dong's palm, and with a swift whoosh, it surged along the surface of the monument. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, the light began to climb rapidly with a breathtaking momentum. In mere moments, the golden light shot past the human grade section without hesitation and burst into the earth grade, continuing its upward trajectory at an incredible speed. It climbed higher and higher, surpassing name after name, leaving the crowd in awe. What? The onlookers murmured in disbelief as the light showed no sign of slowing down, continuing its wild ascent. The momentum of Lin Dong's golden light was astonishing, far surpassing the average Earth grade seal's rise. It wasn't long before the light approached the top ranks of the Earth grade, closing in on the names of the strongest powerhouses. The crowd was abuzz, watching intently to see where it would stop. As it passed the 10th, 9th, and even 8th names, EngSubs' expression darkened. He had been smug earlier, but now his name had already been left far behind by Lin Dong's light. His face twisted in frustration as he clenched his fists. Mu Hanyue, observing from the side, raised an eyebrow, her cold gaze now filled with interest as Lin Dong's performance continued to defy expectations. The light continued climbing, and after a few more moments, it slowed down as it reached the top 5 of the Earth grade, lingering at 5th place.